Good afternoon. I'm Dave Ragland. It's good to see you all. Thank you for coming, as Jennifer said. And I wanted to just open us up as we talk about this sacred reparative season and open us up maybe for a moment of silence. If you choose to, you can lean back into your chair or your seat and just get comfortable. Begin breathing in and out. Take some deep breaths. And feel your body. Your feet planted on the floor, on the ground. Feel your feet and the ground beneath them. And know that we're all connected as we're nourished by this planet, this ground. Feel that support. And I just want to name that not only are we supported, but we're also surrounded by our ancestors, human and non-human, our own direct lineages, and those of the indigenous people of this land, those of enslaved peoples and their descendants, those of European descent, enslavers, migrants. All of that energy is with us. I'm going to breathe in deeply one more time. And note, feel a sense of, let yourself feel gratitude. That we're here and supported and challenged. And I want you to begin opening your eyes to be present. As we work to acknowledge the sacredness of Black lives in this moment, and all of our work and our struggle to reflect and do this work in this reparative season. And again, I welcome you all for those who just came in. And I'm Dave Ragland. I'm one of the co-founders of the Truth Telling Project, co-directors as well, and the director of the Grassroots Reparations Campaign. Thank you for being here. And I want to turn it over to our organizers who are leading this teach-in. Rachel and Jennifer and Dr. Salazar, who's also our co-director and on the call. And I believe Josh is here as well. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Ragland, for those awesome words and those grounding words to get us in the right headspace for the sacred season of reparations. So I just want to take a moment to welcome everybody. Welcome to our reparations teach-in as we prepare for Juneteenth, which is the beginning of the sacred reparative season. This teach-in is hosted by the Truth Telling Project's premier program, the Grassroots Reparations Campaign. Like I said, my name is Rachel Davis with the Truth Telling Operations team.
I'm Jennifer Craig, communications lead and operations team member with the Truth Telling Project.
So before we really get into the content here, I'd like to just pause for a moment to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this land that we stand on now, that we call the US of A. At the Truth Telling Project, we strive to acknowledge the Earth's original inhabitants in the US. And what we like to encourage folks to do is, if you would like to use the chat feature to let us know where you're calling from and what land, what indigenous people inhabited or still inhabit that land. For example, my name is Rachel Davis and I inhabit Raleigh, what's called Raleigh, North Carolina, which was the original home of the many indigenous nations, such as the Lumbee, the Cherokee, the Saponi, just to name a few. So if you want to take a brief few minutes to just write in the chat your name as well as the land that you reside on and the indigenous people who either were or still inhabit that land. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll give the rest of if you haven't yet put your location, you may continue to do that. And I'll hand it over to Jennifer.
Rachel, thank you very, very, very much. That's always just a wonderful, very meaningful exercise. Everyone, these agreements are what we as a team and our organization use to ground us and be in community. So I would like to give us all a few seconds to read through them for ourselves. And after you take a look, if there is something you would like to add, please feel free to unmute yourself and vocalize it or type it into the chat for everybody. We'll commence to read through them for ourselves now if you haven't already. Again, if anyone would like to share anything additional or any thoughts in response to what you see, please, by all means. And if not, we'll move on to our next slide. Thank you, thank you.
So I'd like to go over a little bit of history about the Grassroots Reparations campaign, if that's all right. So in about 2017 and 2018, a group of members from the Fellowship of Reconciliation, the Truth Telling Project, and COBRA, Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth, and the Psychoanalysis for Social Responsibility came together and started collaborating and organizing around reparations. Many other groups became part of that work as well, coming out of Ferguson. So a lot of this came out of the Ferguson uprising. And the Truth Telling Project was really looking at how movements are supported, as well as the ways in which during the uprising and during the subsequent protests and movements against police violence, one of the communities that has shown the greatest support in our movement has been religious congregations that would allow for us to take refuge in their churches and synagogues, temples and sanghas, and holy places.
Now, given that kind of support that religious institutions have given, but also considering how religious institutions, like, for instance, the Catholic Church, my own church, were indeed very much involved in colonization and in providing the moral justification for the enslavement of African peoples, we approach the work of reparations as a spiritual practice in the way that we do, and we seek to introduce reparations education into religious, faith-based, and spiritual institutions, as well as into ethically centered and healing organizations. So in 2019, the Grassroots Reparations campaign formally launched. That year marked 5 years since Michael Brown Jr.'s murder. It marked 40 years since the Greensboro massacre that prompted the first truth and reconciliation process in this country. It marked 50 years since James Foreman introduced the Black Manifesto to demand reparations for the role of religious institutions in the slave trade and ongoing discrimination against Black people. And it marked 400 years since Africans were brought to this continent in chains. The Grassroots Reparations campaign began formally sharing out our work and organizing communities around the history of enslavement and sacred dates, particularly Reparations Sabbath and Sunday. The terms Reparations Sabbath and Sunday come from the work of Queen Mother Dorothy Benton Lewis, who is an elder of NCOBRA that proposed that religious, faith, and spiritual communities place these days on their calendars and spend them organizing and moving funds for reparations. Some of the early work also included supporting religious, faith, spiritual, ethically centered, and healing communities to make policy changes and to budget for reparations. We at GRC want, with all our hearts, to conceive of reparations as not just a cash payment, but also a movement toward accountability in our country. One, to really use my language, one that starts in your soul. We want reparations to really reach into the soul, and for you to have this value set, right there, that deep. So, because if we're not accountable for the past, where is the future? So what we seek to do is reinvigorate and reinforce the notion of sacredness around our lives, around our experiences, and definitely around being accountable for our past. I'd like to pass the baton to Rachel again as she reads for you the vision statement and the mission statement of GRC.
Thank you, Jennifer. I want us to reflect a little bit, on our vision and our mission statement. I'll read the vision statement first and give you all some time to reflect on that, and then I'll move on to our mission statement. So our vision statement reads as follows. We envision a culture of reparations that is accountable to the past and ongoing spiritual, moral, and material harm created by chattel slavery, colonialism, and genocide. These past harms create the current conditions in which we live and impact our future. We seek to create a world where reconciliation is possible because racism is no more. Our mission statement reads as follows. We uplift faith-based and ethically centered framework that demands accountability for the history and current world condition that slavery, colonialism, genocide, and other material and moral abuses created. We have set out to create a culture of reparations that emerges from spiritual practice, transformative action, education, and action.
Powerful, Rachel. Powerful, thank you. So today with this presentation, we want to introduce to you our sacred reparative season. At the Grassroots Reparations campaign, we are anticipating the beginning of this season on Juneteenth. We will run it through the end of Black August as a way to address, well, the myriad tribulations of our world, but beginning with the spiritual practice that we know is reparations. Now, during our sacred reparative season, we encourage religious, spiritual, faith-based, ethically centered, and healing organizations to join the thousands of others who are transforming spiritual practice by looking at what our core beliefs say about our past, looking at where we are currently, and then looking at how we may collectively just transcend, almost rise above current social norms toward a level of accountability that makes reparations possible. Those of us who in the past have participated in a reparations course with the Grassroots Reparations campaign have met Dr. Madria Connolly and Dr. Brian Nichols, who I really want to mention to you because we quote them on this slide. We love to quote them as saying, "We must transform the ghosts haunting our national lives into ancestors we can understand and make amends for the harm that they cause." And to us, we approach doing that through spiritual practice. Now, so from Juneteenth through the end of Black August, the Grassroots Reparations campaign reflects, remembers, plans for reparative action, and holds this reparative season sacred.
So just to give you a little more detail about some of the key dates during the sacred reparative season, we are starting out strong with Juneteenth, which is June 19th, I'm sorry, which is a sacred day within the living theology of Black liberation. And next we will go to July 3rd, which is the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass gave his famous speech entitled, "What to the Slaves is the 4th of July." If you have not read it or listened to it, I highly recommend it. It's amazing. It's extremely powerful. So definitely look it up. Also, July 4th, obviously, is a day of recognizing the history, which largely remains unquestioned, of freedom for an independence for the US, but free for who, as we know. And also, we are going to be celebrating Black August, which is a month that's kind of heralded as sort of another Black History Month, but the focus is more the celebration of Black freedom fighters, which Black August originated to follow the murder of George Jackson and is meant to honor political prisoners. It is also a time for paying attention to the ways in which our consumption is related to the founding of this nation. The sacred reparative season is going to also acknowledge December 2nd, which is the UN International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. And this also jumpstarts the Jubilee season, which we commemorate the field order 15th of an 1865 ordinance promising 40 acres and a mule to newly freed Africans in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Throughout the sacred reparative season, and those sacred dates that we continue to reflect on and prepare to act on the basis of, we encourage religious, faith-based, spiritual, healing, and ethically centered communities to come together, acknowledge those key dates, and hold a reparations Sabbath, a reparations Sunday, or reparations Sabbath, Saturday, or Sunday event. On those sacred days, we encourage you to either adapt a usual service, a worship service, for instance, to include the theme of reparations all the way throughout it. We encourage you to perhaps hold an event outside, yet in addition to your traditional service if you choose. Or for ethically centered and healing institutions, we encourage you to hold a special event on a designated day that commemorates and that gathers people around Reparations Sabbath, Saturday, or Sunday. Just to note why we very, very deliberately work within faith-based communities, in addition to ethically centered and healing organizations, is again because of our approach to reparations as, even first and foremost, a spiritual practice. They're not just a transaction. They're not just a check. Right, Rachel? Passing the baton to you, my friend.
Exactly. No, it's good. But like Jennifer said, a lot of people think of reparations as just being a check, just that one transaction that you have that fixes everything. And we all know that that's not true. They're not just about making a material amends from the wounds of the past. They're a deeply relational practice that brings us to account for the healing and of ongoing harm in a spiritual, moral, and material capacity.
Thank you, Rachel. So our invitation to you all, our invitation to everyone as we prepare to begin our sacred reparative season, is to organize and to host a reparations Sabbath or Saturday and Sunday event with your religious, spiritual, faith-based, healing, or ethically centered organization. The invitation is to take an active approach to the deep relational healing that can occur when we gather people and encourage a collective focus on spirituality and reparations, as well as the key question, where do we go from here? On the whole, joining us to commemorate our sacred reparative season and Reparations Sabbath, Reparations Saturday, and/or Reparations Sunday encourages among us all reflection, reconsideration, and movement toward reparative action. So we invite you and your community to use this season as a time to do all of the above, to reflect on our freedom dreams, to heal from our collective trauma, and to engage in education about our shared history using spiritual writings, using teachings that prepare us for reparations in our personal and our spiritual, social, and political lives. As a suggested sequence for a service or perhaps a gathering or an event, well, you would open that event in your chosen way, perhaps follow that opening with songs, with even prayers, with readings from holy texts or inspirational writings or founding documents or whatever you choose, but material that supports reparation. Perhaps you may also follow that up with opening conversation, with beginning a dialogue, perhaps even asking and beginning to answer a few hard questions. Then you might follow up that portion with a ritual or a ceremony to revisit the spiritual practice that is reparations. You might just follow that up with engaging the audience about action steps about the question and the answer to where do we go from here? You know, when we leave, when we walk, when we adjourn, what will tomorrow look like? What will we continue to do to take action? You may draw from what you have seen other truth-telling and reparationist groups do, draw from their example, follow their lead, but we do recommend to at least include in your reparations Sabbath, Saturday, or Sunday event a call to action for sure. So to give a little bit more context, the approach to reparations as that spiritual practice, and even to quote our co-directors here, as the midpoint between truth and reconciliation, it comes from what I'll often refer to as a spiritual, but synonymously a moral and very real existential harm caused by enslavement, caused by the Jim Crow era, the ballooning of our carceral system, and other lingering vestiges of slavery in the United States. So our approach to reparations as first and foremost a spiritual practice, it truly leads to, or it's meant to lead to reflection on just the very, very worst of human nature, and then on the very best to which we can aspire. It leads to active engagement with the moral imperative that we all have to right past and ongoing wrongs. Now, as the Grassroots Reparations Campaign, we also draw for our approach to reparations upon the framing that you have in front of you that from the United Nations Development Program, which describes reparations as restitution, rehabilitation, compensation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repeat. We know that a culture of reparations requires telling the truth about past harms inflicted upon Black individuals and holding citizens accountable to a transforming society in the way that you see before you. But at the grassroots level, at where we are at our wonderfully localized, relational, interpersonal level, we can be empowered to commemorate the sacred reparative season and Reparations Sabbath, Saturday, and Sunday for ourselves, and in that way watch reparations take root as a spiritual practice.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So next, I would like to walk us through some guiding questions that'll really help you get ready for your Reparations Sabbath, Saturday, or Sunday event. I'm going to read the question and just kind of give you a little bit of time to reflect on each one. These questions are great for just kind of putting the thoughts in your head of how should I go about this? Where should I start? So the first question is, what does a spiritual approach to reparations look like for you and your community? What is working well for you in your community? What conditions would you like to change? Looking forward to the sacred reparative season, would your community host a Reparations Sabbath, Reparations Sunday event? And now, when might your community host the event? All really good questions to ponder and to think about. All right, next slide. So some more guiding questions for us to think about. Would your community host an in-person or a virtual event? I think either would be great, but something to think about. And next, how would your community organize the event? Would your event take place during a traditional service or as a special event? And finally, how would you promote your event? There's so many different ways to do that. We send out a newsletter at TTP. Jennifer does a wonderful job of doing that. We also have social media. And of course, some other options for you all would be pulpit from the pulpit or some sort of bulletin, whether it's a church bulletin or any other type of community newsletter bulletin. So yeah, just some great things to think about when organizing your own event. So something really important about organizing an event is the follow-up, the feedback. You want to make sure that you encourage people to give, so you want to encourage folks who participated in whatever Reparations Sabbath or Saturday event you have to let you know how it went. For example, whenever GRC has or TTP has done an event, we typically will send out a kind of a survey, kind of a list of maybe 10 questions about what people thought was good about the event, how we could improve, what they wish we would include next time, maybe just some ways to be more inclusive. Yeah, so it's a great way to make sure that there's a continuation and more events can happen in the future. So also using a QR code is a good way to, which we have one right here, which is a good way for you to do that as well. And usually when you scan a QR code, it can come up with, it's a quick way to sort of get a survey or anything that you need done pretty fast. People can do it right on the spot after the event. So that's another way. So now, I know you've been listening to us talk, but we would love to hear from you all. We would like to do a Q&A section right now. So any questions that you have or concerns or thoughts, we'd love to hear those now.
With that, if I may, I would love to introduce a special guest that we have here today, a friend and colleague of our organization, Jody Geddes, with Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth, or RJOY, excuse me. And Jody agreed to come and speak about her experience of hosting a Reparations Sabbath, Saturday or Sunday event, and just the significance of that commemoration to her work overall in pursuing reparations.
Would you like me to share now? I would love to hear from folks first, but I can
Whatever you'd like, Jody, yeah.
All right, no worries. I can say a little bit. Hey everyone, my name is Jody Geddes. I am here in Oakland, California on Ohlone and Chochenyo land, and I descend from the Taínos and the Maroons of Jamaica, West Indies. I'm also, someone who grew up in New York. So there's all these things that make up who I am and inform how I show up in the world. Dave and I are really great friends, and I'm always appreciative of the way that he brings me into space. I also have some other fam on this call, like Josh, Danita. It's good to see you, Rachel and Jennifer. So just really sweet to be in this space. I'll say quickly, I really appreciate being a co-convener of the Grassroots Reparations Campaign. I think that it is a unique approach to the way that we view reparations, really creating space for people to shift away from the transactional relationship that can also lack accountability. I think that I ain't white, but I'm just saying people who walk through the world as white, I think often when I'm entering into space with folks and they cut a check, there's a way that it is seen as a part of their moral goodness, right? But doesn't push folks to make real changes about their behaviors and how they show up and engage in the world. And the reality is those behaviors have real consequences on the ability for people to live their lives freely with dignity and to move through space. And I think that is often missed. Even in the anti-racism movement, there's a way in which the racial hierarchy is enforced, right? It is reinforced. It is almost as if by just being people who walk through the world as Black inherently don't have any dignity. And so to give an example is the privilege walk. I always talk about this thing, the privilege walk. It's an activity that I choose not to do anymore, but there are a series of questions that go across kind of economic status, education, assumptions about familiar relationships. And the assumption with that game is that all of the Black folks are going to be in the back, and anyone else with proximity to whiteness will either be in the middle or in the front. And because people already have that assumption, there isn't a correcting of how race itself is something that is created and how it's something that is made up, but even how that activity itself reinforces the kind of racial hierarchy. And so that's just an example. And I think that the campaign really creates space to provide a deeper education from folks during the first, year and a half, 2 years. We're really focused on education. So we continue to do this. As you see, we did a series of different teach-ins and workshops and conversations with community members, because even the information that is received around reparations and its possibility is false, right? That reparations has been given, just not to Black folks, right? Like, let's be real, people who after kind of Emancipation Proclamation and multiple series of policies that granted freedom to Black bodies, or different kinds of freedoms to Black body in our world, folks who were owners received money for damages, right? Because it was seen as a loss. The same thing happened with Haiti, right? That Haiti had to then pay the French for their freedom, although they won a revolution, right? One of the first free Black nations. And this happens in many other places in this country and across the world. And so it's really important to be able to correct that, because the misinformation, for lack of a better word, is used as a reason for folks to not draw nearer to the act of reparations that is expansive. I think that we should cut a check for many different reasons. And I also think that it's important to recognize how trauma lives in the body, right? And how it continues to be perpetuated through so many things, right? From the way that roads and highways are designed, to the development of schools, to the building of grocery stores, or lack thereof grocery stores in many communities. All of these are a part of the act of repair, or what it means for one to be able to truly have choice, not just feel like that they have choice, but to truly have choice. And so the kind of Reparations Sunday and the Sabbath really provide an opportunity for deeper knowledge and information. And probably the part that sometimes can be the most challenging, it provides space for people to really get proximate and to really be in relationship. And I'll name that because that is something that is challenging for me. It is easy to often go to action because you don't necessarily always have to engage in deep relationship in order to take action. And the moment where we, as a restorative justice practitioner, the moment we realize that there's a lack of relationship, although people may be doing work together for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, is when there is conflict. Because there becomes a question of, what are your values? What are your agreements? Even how we set agreements for this space, right? It is not about perfection, but how do we aspire to be in space with each other? And sometimes that is missing, right? Because there's such a focus on a particular kind of action that there isn't space to get proximate and to really be in deep relationship. As I said, I'm not expecting this to be perfect for anyone. That has been a challenge for me. In addition to supporting Our Joy, I'm also the co-manager of Coming to the Table, that brings together descendants of enslavement to really think about transformation and healing. And particularly doing the work with Coming to the Table really taught me what it meant to get proximate with white folks who were doing their own grieving, whether or not it was the way that I was grieving, how to hold space and to honor that. And then to also challenge folks to really make some changes in behavior and even the ways that these particular stories of harm are held up as a testament to why someone is anti-racist. And so the kind of Reparations Sabbath and Sundays create an opportunity to not just speak truth to power, but to also take steps forward where the physical being of someone is also an act of resistance and is also an act of repair. And if we really want to talk about it, particularly in the Christian context, as someone who grew up Catholic, Jesus was an organizer. And in many ways, that story isn't talked about, like what liberation theology looks like, because often what is seen as a crucifixion, right, and the sacrifice of the son is seen as something that was only done to absolve white people, right? And so there's all these layers that have to be peeled back, where there are ministries that profit so much off of Black pain and, this rhetoric of anti-racism, but within their own spaces of faith, there isn't real action that's being taken in order to transform. It's only perpetuating harm. So I probably just said a whole lot more words than I wanted to say, but above all, it really creates a space, I think, for folks to get proximate, but also what does it mean to challenge each other, where we are not performing racism, we are not performing freedom. Like, I don't want to perform freedom, I don't want to perform joy. I want it to be an integrated part of who I am. And the last thing I'll say is that this is the first time, and David and I talk about this a lot, this is the first time in my life, probably from when I was like maybe 6 years old, right? And playing in the sprinklers in New York. It's the first time in my life where I've experienced joy that is not in opposition to white supremacy, that my joy can just exist by my full being, and I don't have to think about how that joy is resisting something. And a part of that is I shift the way that I organized, that it was heavy and it was painful, and it felt like I was asking systems to grant me dignity without recognizing my own. And that is a part of internalized racial oppression. And that doesn't mean that I'm weak or that I'm fragile, but the reality of the way that trauma works and it moves in the body, and it not being something that I was conscious and aware of. And it just so happened that Spirit allowed me to be a mother. And it was like, if this is the world that you say you want to create, my kid also needs to see that in the now. And how do I show up with my behaviors and my actions in the now? And so this approach really allows folks to drop into the body, where we're not performing anti-racism, we're not performing repair, we're not performing healing, but really taking actions in our own bodies and the way that we connect with each other in the world. So I hope that was what y'all wanted. I hope that was helpful. That's me. I'm Melinda. I just yelled into y'all's ears.
Thank you so much, Jody. Really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing a big part of yourself, and thank you for being on here. Yeah, so we want to come back to community sharing. And again, you've just heard some powerful words as well as our presentation, which is also powerful, but we just want to give you some time to express what you're thinking and just have any questions that you might have. And I can't see if anybody's raising their hand right now,
Okay.
so let me see.
Oh, I'll just chime in then, if that's
Okay,
okay,
cool.
unless someone else.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm Jocelyn Liu, and with Middle Collegiate Church, and I'm co-chair of the Reparations Task Force there. It's really great to be here. I was here at last summer's classroom, the trainings, the intensive, that was amazing. And I feel like I just need to really, I love what you were saying then and now, Jody, as Dave and others on the call. So it was so important to our thinking, and being here right now is a great way to almost hit the refresh button for us, because we've done a lot of work as we reflect on it, but we still have so much to go. And part of what I'm reflecting on, we've done some reparations Sabbaths and some events, but what we realized as a task force is that we have to just come together and build some fellowship. So we have done a lot of work in our cultural, multi-faith church community to really kind of diversify the task force. And now that we are diversified, we're finding new opportunities to understand and misunderstand each other, to read and misread each other. So we're continuing to work and do action, but part of what we're doing is a retreat, so we can be together and do some work together and get some tools about how to be together in ways that honor us all and help, meet conflict both head on, but also lovingly. And we're finding that's really hard and important work as we move forward with other more public actions in our reparations project. So I don't know if I'm being, I just wanted to share that little part, just that we have a lot of internal work still to do as a task force group. And that became very well known to us as we worked in the world.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate the work that you're already doing and so glad you could be here. I see some hands. I'm going to call on Susan Duncan.
Hi, so I'm a member of Providence Friends meeting. We're just outside of Philadelphia in Media, Pennsylvania. And we had the opportunity to, about 7 of us, to participate in a January intensive course in Philadelphia that was part of the Mayor's Commission, Interfaith Council and the Truth Telling Project. So it was a 4 days of sort of intensive learning about reparations. And we took that work back to our meeting and then held a series of events, one each month, around different aspects of reparations. We're Quaker. We started with Harold Weaver's Pendle Hill pamphlet on race and restorative justice. And we then moved on to a sort of by the numbers of harms that have been caused. And it was a lot of just factual information presented. And during that part, I took the part of harms being caused by our faith community, which were the Quakers. I think many people know that William Penn brought the first enslaved people to this area. So the Quakers were directly responsible for bringing enslaved people here. And I think that was a big shock to a lot of people in our community, but it was also just a very important thing to acknowledge, because we'd heard a lot about the abolitionist side of our faith, but not so much about the slave traders and the enslavers. So, and I also looked at a very local level. We're part of the Chester Quarter, and we had actual manumissions from that time period. So we knew the names of some of the people that were enslaved and some of the slave holders and slave traders. So it was sort of this was all done within our own meeting, so it was all internal, and about more than half the people that normally would attended these sessions. And we ended in May 21st. We had a called meeting where the meeting came in unity with commitment to being a community of healing and repair, and a community that was ready to make reparations. So we're sort of at the very beginning of that journey, and that's why I was interested too in, as we're approaching the summer, how to carry this forward. And I had thought about programming to bring people into the meeting after our meeting for worship to perhaps watch sessions of the 1619 project and have discussions, or to watch Descendant again and have discussions, to keep people in community together. And I was still thinking of it being just our own meeting, but it could expand to other meetings in the area or other faith communities. We're still very much kind of within ourselves, and we're ready to take the next step, but we're not there yet. We haven't. We will be working on writing an acknowledgement, and some sort of action plan for us to move forward. But we're just sort of at that. We're sort of I guess in that intermediate stage right now. So.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's great to hear from members of the Quaker community. I'm Mennonite, which is we're kind of like cousins, sort of. A lot of us in that area in Pennsylvania. I want to call on Wiley Bryan next, and then after that, Antonia Coleman.
Hi, my name is Willie Bryan, and I'm in Lansing,
Sorry about that.
Michigan. Oh, no problem. I'm in Lansing, Michigan, and I wanted to just share and say that I appreciate being here and hearing about the work you're doing. And I wanted to share some work we're doing in Lansing and talk about the program that we are planning for Juneteenth and the restorative sacred period. We have formed a faith-based reparations project. Here, the name of our project is the Justice League of Greater Lansing, Michigan. And we we've been established about 2 years now. And we are planning, and it's a faith-based model where we actually go to white churches and talk about the history and give the churches the opportunity to participate in our reparations project through their church endowments. And that is currently happening. We are following the tenets of the Black Manifesto, essentially. I wanted to say also that we're working, one of the houses of worship that we're working with is the Quakers, so that Quakers have participated and contributed to our reparations fund. For our project programming for Juneteenth, we will have an apology from the Presbyterian Church USA read to the African American community on Juneteenth on the steps of the Capitol. Lansing is the state capital of Michigan. And so we will have that apology was issued in June of 22 at the Presbyterian Church's national meeting. And that apology will be read by white houses of worship, leadership, and membership on the steps of the state capitol. We will have our state senator, Senator Sarah Anthony, will be in attendance and one of our speakers for that day. So I wanted to share that we're feeling very excited about the project and being able to impact the community in that way.
Thank you so much, Wiley, about hearing all of the things that you're up to. We definitely like to keep in touch with you. If you wouldn't mind, and just everybody, just putting your emails in the chat so that we can reconnect. Antonia Coleman, did you still have something to say too?
Hi, yes, I will be brief, and it's good to see you, Miss Willie, again. I met you at the reparations meeting here in Chicago. I am Antonia Coleman. I am the daughter of Bill, and I am Joyce's heartbeat. It is an honor to be with you all. Dr. Ragland, I think I sent you an email, but I will put my information in the chat as well. The Center for Reparatory Justice, Transformation, and Remediation is an organization that is a joint initiative between McCormick Theological Seminary and the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. What we are planning for Juneteenth is we have Juneteenth at Carnegie, where there will be a program that is sponsored by Reverend Dr. James Forbes. And with this year, we will be honoring Dr. Gay Dougal, the Carter Center, and Reverend Dr. James Lawson Jr. for their work as it relates to reparatory justice. And there will be artists there like Take Six and a few other folks rendering musical selections for us. In addition to that, there is a group that's here in Chicago that, for those of us who are not able to travel to New York, we are also participating in the Illinois African Descent Citizens Reparations Commission. All these groups with these long names. We will be partnering with them, going to our 10-day countdown to Juneteenth as it relates to the part that Illinois played in, when General Granger came to Illinois, he picked up Black soldiers from Peoria, Illinois, and Quincy, Illinois, and then they continued to march on to Galveston, Texas. So we will be having a sacred memory service, and I would love to use that you all's outline for worship, if that's possible. And I would also like to, there will be a truth-telling commission in September that, I would like for you all to partner with us on in Southern Illinois, because Southern Illinois was a slavery was big and mighty. Slavery, this was something that I just recently learned, because like I've told people, I grew up in Illinois, but they didn't teach us this in our social studies and our history courses in high school. All I got was Malcolm X died at a party and Martin Luther King was on a balcony and he died. They did not tell us that Illinois was the leader in salt mine enslavement. So we're going down there in Illinois, and I would love for the Truth Telling Project to partner with us. Yeah, that's where the event is going to be. We're looking at SIUE on September 23rd, and I want to take a busload of seminary students from Chicago, and to have a liturgical moment, outside of the state sanctioned moment that will be happening. So yes, I'm going to put my information in the chat, and I would love to build upon this relationship that we have. Thank you for you all's time, and I appreciate this.
Thank you so much, Antonia, right? Thank you so much for all that you've shared. And I'm excited to get your contact information so we can keep in touch. I'm going to pass it to Jennifer to make a few announcements.
Well, thank you, Rachel. Just before Rachel closes us out, I just wanted to indicate that on July 3rd, our organization is doing a reading of Frederick Douglass's What to the Slaves is the 4th of July. So please do indeed watch out on social media for an invitation to view that. So that's my brief interlude. Back to you, Rachel, and great to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you for everything that you've shared, and for those who have been reflective and in their silence. Thank you for great to share the space with you, and thank you also for being here.
Rachel, I'm gonna jump in real quick. Dave asked if I would share a closing song with y'all. So I'm going to do that now, I believe. Could I ask Josh, could you come out of the slides, please, and go back to gallery view? Or whoever. Thanks. All right. Awesome. Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and a song. And if you would like to just sit back, be comfortable, close your eyes. We all know that those who have gone, well, some of us know that those who have gone beyond, are with us. We can feel them. We can feel them in the dawn when we wake up. We can feel them perhaps throughout the day. And we'd like to share this piece with you.
Oh, they're watching, ancestors watching. I know they're watching. I know they're watching, ancestors watching. I know they're watching. I know. Ancestors watching. I know they're watching. I know. I know.
You know that the popular fungus treatment you've been using could actually be making your toenail fungus worse.
Back to you, Rachel.
All right, just in closing, I wanted to say we definitely want to keep in touch, and I saw that some people are interested in getting the slides. I think that's definitely possible. We have people's emails. I just want to make sure we have everybody who wants to continue staying in contact. Thank you so much for coming to our teach-in. We really appreciated your presence. And we are having another teach-in today at 8:30. If anybody that you know is interested, that will be open for everyone as well. And we hope to hear from you all soon. And thank you for coming.
You were not hearing that music?
We did for like the first half, and then it just stopped. Then maybe it just was me, but it just started feeling like,
Well, that's
I don't know,
about-
Josh, what do you think? Did you hear the whole song, Josh, or maybe it was just me?
I think I did, but it did like kind of end.
Okay.
Oh, that's a bummer. Okay. I don't know why.
I thought it was a natural end. I didn't realize that it was cut off.
Wow. Huh. Weird.
Hmm.
Okay, talk to y'all later. Great
Talk to
job.
you soon.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you,
I want
guys.
to make sure I have everybody's email before I close this out. So,
Wait, so I'm gonna do that and just end that when you can.
okay, will do.
I'll be back in a moment.
You off the chat?
Mm-mm.